Welcome to episode 3 of the VSI Sporting Directors podcast, and we decided to do something a little bit different, giving you video to go with the audio as we showcase the wonderful facilities of our partners OmniSports. And what a beautiful studio this is. And to give you an even clearer idea of what OmniSports do and how agents operate, plus the role of the sporting director within transfer deals and contract renewals, I'd like to introduce you to a qualified lawyer and someone who's been through VSI's CEO course. She's also COO of OmniSports and a fearsome table tennis player too. Our latest guest is Kelly Skeggs, and I can take my glasses off, which I'm delighted about. This is brilliant. This is a fantastic studio. What facility?
We're really lucky to have it. It's a nice mix to have music, celebrities, footballers. It's a really good vibe in the building, so we're really lucky to be here.
You walk through the doors and we're just off the kind of Mancunian Way, the Parkway here in Manchester, and it's just a creative hub, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a creative hub, and you wouldn't look from the outside and say, that's going on the inside. So people come in and are just astounded by the facilities that we've got and what it looks like. And we put loads of events on here, and it always goes down well, especially the studios and the auditorium. And we've got pool and snooker and gyms and all sorts going on here, which our players have access to. So we're very, very lucky.
That's the polite, touchy-feely stuff out of the way. I've got to get something off my chest very, very quickly. And I have very strong feelings about this.
Okay.
We're both from Suffolk.
We are.
You are a Norwich City fan. I'm an Ipswich fan, which clearly there's a beef already there.
There is a beef.
But you have the temerity to live in Suffolk as well, which I don't have much time for.
No, I'm sorry. I've spent a lot of time in Norfolk. I've lived in Norwich. I did my degree in Norwich. I did my training contract in Norwich. I came back from overseas and stayed in Norwich. So Norwich has a big place in my heart. And sadly, it got to it before the Tractor Boys.
And I'm not going to make an Ipswich-Norwich thing, well, not much longer anyway. But that is fierce rivalry. I mean, I'm pathological about Norwich, and I'm quite an easygoing sort of person, really.
Yes, I remember a game. It was a 4-1 to Norwich. Sorry, where I sat in the stands, and it was a crazy atmosphere. The animosity between the two, given that we're such a laid back area, like East Anglia, it's all slow and 30 mile an hour and tractors, and you get to that game and you would not think that you were in East Anglia. So yeah, it's a heavy rivalry.
But I'm right in thinking you're also grateful to Ipswich Town Football Club for making you the person you are today. That was a key job in the terms of the journey that you've been on that takes you to OmniSports.
Yes, it was my first job that brought me into football. So I worked for a law firm called Leafs Pryor, and they were very kind and wanted to support me in my passion for sports law, my desire to go into a company to see the workings of a business rather than just sit on the side of an advisor from a legal perspective. So they said, if you find a secondment, then we'll support you in that secondment. So I wrote to a few clubs and interviewed with a few, and Mr. Simon Clegg, who was Chief Exec of Ipswich Town at the time, said, you are just the person we need. You've got the legal knowledge, the background, the organisation, the administration, and the leadership capacity to project manage our restructure of the academy when the EPPP and youth development rules came in.
And you were how old?
23, yeah, definitely.
And he was confident you had all the right stuff.
I think because I had the backing of my firm, so I had all the partners on call. So when you go on secondment, you've got access to everybody else in that firm, because obviously the idea is to develop the relationship between the client and the firm. So as long as I had the backing of the partners, I was able to on-site manage the project, and he was going to stand side by side with me to make sure that if there was any issues with any implementation matters or man management issues, because obviously it was a change for everybody in the academy, and it wasn't just a small change, it was a very large change across the board in football. He was willing to sit beside me to make sure that obviously it was very important to the club, and Marcus was very clear that he wanted a Category 2, and we were going to do what we needed to do to get there.
And full disclosure, did you say
we did.
Did you say you were a Norwich fan? No.
Did
they know that? Did they know that they had a canary within their midst?
I think they did. I think I told Simon when I was first interviewed. I have to be open about it, right?
but you did the job, and you got us Ipswich Town Football Club to where they needed to go.
Yes, it was an amazing feat. We only had, I think, 4 months left before we were going to be audited, and it was a brand new process. So I had to learn the regulations from scratch, audit against what was happening in practice, and then advise the board on where the gaps were, and then implement the necessary changes to fill those gaps.
I mean, we're sitting here and it's a sporting directors podcast, and I said it's video and audio. You've not been a sporting director in name.
No.
But you pretty much were a sporting director when you took your next job in Hull. And I'm not going to make this linear. I'm not going to say you did this, and this.
Yeah.
But I think it gives the audience an idea that you know the kind of nuts and bolts around being a sporting director.
Yeah. So when I joined Hull, it was an interesting time because the Alams had just taken over and I didn't have a football background. And there was no chief exec in place. There was no football director in place, no sporting director in place. They didn't have any legal. So they didn't have much structure or strategy around what they were trying to achieve. So when I went in for them, it was a bit of a baptism of fire, because instead of recruiting for all those roles, they kind of threw me in and said, well, you can start on that role. And as the days developed, you take on more and more of the gaps within the club. So Steve Bruce and his backroom team had just been appointed at exactly the same time as I was appointed. And as there was no conduit, I guess, between the owners and the football management team, I sat in between and did a lot of the communication and messaging between the parties to stop the confrontational nature between the manager and the ownership, which would have blown up at any minute on any given day. And they wanted me to run the football budgets. So one of the jobs of a sporting director is to run the football budget. So you're looking at the sports science budget, the medical budget, analyst budget, etc. So I was over in the training ground a lot doing that. And I also run the football administration of the club, so club secretary role, making sure that we were compliant, looking at the governance and the football administration, working with agents, bringing players in and out of the club.
So you were doing effectively everything?
Yeah, basically everything.
How much of a learning curve was that, bearing in mind we're sitting here further on down the line?
It was very much a sink or swim time. And for me, failure isn't really an option. So I got my... I just got stuck in. It was a baptism of fire. I was in the deep end and I was just extending my snorkel day by day until I was on my feet. And you learn as you go. So I had an amazing assistant club secretary who was teaching me how to be a club secretary. You're in the training ground, but it's all about people. The whole role is about people and how you understand the relationships and how they work and how you can best get the best out of each individual within that setting. And as a young female going into the training ground, I was obviously one of the very few females within that area, and learning how to walk into the breakfast room and have breakfast with the lads, and walk into the manager's room and have a discussion about transfers with him, and then to go and meet the owners in the boardroom to manage that relationship as well. So it was an incredible experience for me, and I loved it. And that's where my real passion and desire for the football business started.
And I don't want to make this an examination of women in sport, and we're not talking about a long time ago, but it might as well have been medieval times, bearing in mind how things have changed so quickly.
Yep. I was probably one of the only ones in football at the time. So it was a fairly lonely place, but you just work harder and keep working. So you learn and you work and you teach yourself and you ask the right questions and you find out the way, know what you don't know, and then work with the people close by that do know the answers, and then everything comes together. But it's definitely an incredible experience for me to work with the football side and the business side. I even chaired the senior leadership team. At 23, it seems crazy.
But long days as well.
Oh, very long days. You don't stop. When you're doing 5 people's jobs, I was in at 7. I probably didn't leave till 11, 12 o'clock at night. I would then go to the gym, and then I'd start again the next day. And then you were at games on a Tuesday, games at a Saturday. You were there for games on Boxing Day. Yeah, you definitely never stopped. I was okay with that. I was 23. I had no responsibilities. I'd moved my whole life up to Hull. I didn't have any friends there, so my whole life was work. So yeah, I just worked really hard to learn what I needed to learn to get the job done.
Are you tied in when you're working for a club to the rhythm of the club, or could you be dispassionate about what goes on the pitch?
Absolutely not. You're completely tied in. You care about it.
So you would have been actually supporting Ipswich Town when you worked for Ipswich Town, which I was trying to get you to say. It helped if they won.
Yeah, it definitely helped if you won. I think Ipswich is slightly different because of the rival we've already spoken about. But and also Ipswich was a placement role, so it was very much a project. So you've got this project and you need to achieve that project. So I don't think that necessarily you're as ingrained into the club and the passion and the community as what I was at Hull. Whereas with Hull, you're with the fans, you're speaking to the fans, you're at fans forums, they're engaging with you daily. You're seen around the stadium, you're in at the training ground, you're friends with the players, you're friends with the backroom staff. Like, it becomes very much a part of who you are. And when you're working so hard towards an end goal and everybody's working together towards that end goal, it's impossible not to be fully ingrained and passionate about exactly what's going on the pitch on a Saturday.
I said at Hull that you were ostensibly a sporting director without that job as your kind of portfolio. Did it give you an idea or appreciation that would need to be a role that happened in football, bearing in mind your experience?
At that time, the sporting directors were not prevalent in the UK, so they were starting to come on the scene in Europe, but we had more directors of football. So I would have said I probably sat with the director of football role, because myself, I didn't understand at 23 what a sporting director did, and it's only because of the VSI course and the CEO program that I've been in for the last few years that I now understand the detailed workings of what a sporting director should do and why they exist. But in terms of what clubs benefit from is the owners come in and they have their own vision and they've got their own philosophy, and somebody needs to guardian that and they need to implement that across the club because it's the owner's club. But also there's a responsibility to the fans, so the ownership need guidance on what the fans' needs and wants are, because then they might be forgotten. But on the football side, to look at exactly what the owner's strategy and philosophy is, and then to transcend it down into the football side of the business is really important. And that relationship between the manager and the owners, which can be quite...
It's an emotional business, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very emotional, and there are so many opinions, and you're talking about a lot of ego. And so sometimes it just needs to be massaged. Is a good massage. The egos need to be massaged, and the relationship between the owners and the manager needs to be looked after and managed carefully.
But I don't imagine in any football club that you've worked in that you backed away from kind of confrontation and arguments. That's not who you are, is it?
No, definitely not. But sometimes a lot of people just need to get something off their chest, so it's never personal. And that's something that I didn't know at the time, but I now know, is that people just need to get something off their chest. So I'm delivering a message. It's not my message. It's someone else's message, but I'm the one delivering it, right? And that person's not happy with the message that's being delivered. But instead of the confrontation, the conflict being these two parties, it's between these two parties, which then means that this relationship here can continue to be ceremonious and amicable and not have the conflict. So having the mediator in the middle to look after that relationship, to stop it being so fractious, is really crucial. And for me, as sporting director, is important for many reasons, but that being one of them.
When you talk about football, your eyes light up.
Yeah.
You know, and then they do when you talk about being a part of a football club.
Yeah.
Was that a hard thing to kind of give up, bearing in mind we're sitting in two very nice chairs, a lovely studio, and you're not part of a football club anymore?
Yeah. I think it's a different side of the fence that I sit on now. So I now get to look after the players in the clubs. And I think often when you look at, and you're talking about players within football clubs, they are now becoming assets of football clubs, and the individuality of each one of those as people is missing. Clubs are becoming more cognizant of that and are improving their player care aspects of their operations. But I like to assist the players and look after the players and sort out their needs. And it's also useful for me to understand from club side what I can do this side, because I've already been that side, so I already know what's going on that end, which really helps me with what I do. I guess the one thing that's missing is the passion and the community and the sense of togetherness of what everybody's trying to achieve in a football club. There's literally no buzz like it.
But it also means with the players you kind of dip in and out of clubs anyway and sort of support them on your own terms, perhaps.
Yeah. Dip in and out of clubs, friendly with them all, and we get to support the players, right? So for us, it's now about how good they're doing and watching their progress and working with them to see them fulfill their potential on the field. So it's just a different feel.
I mean, it's important to stress you're not an agent.
No, I'm not an agent.
You're a qualified lawyer.
Yep.
But you look after agents here, like you look after the players.
Yep.
What's the reality of an agency as opposed to what people think an agency is, which is money being marched in big bags
yes,
in and out of the doors of OmniSport?
Briefcases and sacks and all sorts. I think that the image of agents is what the public and the media want everybody to see, right? So the small football family will understand the importance of what agents do and what they bring to the game. And so will the players and the clubs. But outside of that family, people and the public will only ever get to see what the press and social media want them to see, which is ordinarily that an agent's taken millions of pounds out of a deal and essentially has done nothing for that deal. So why are they getting paid millions? And that's bad for the game and the money's going out of the game. Why do they deserve it? So in reality, it's nothing like that. And that might be one deal in 1,000 deals where that happens, and that happens to make the front page and what everybody sees. But what goes on behind the scene is completely different to that. And the value that we add to the game and the moving and shaking that we have to do to make the market move, which otherwise wouldn't move if agents didn't exist, and how we look after the players off field with all of their needs off field, which allows them to perform on field, which then obviously adds value to each club that goes along. If you've got a good agent behind each single player, then you've got the player that's fully focused on what he's doing on the pitch and not what's happening off the pitch. So I think that the public perception of what agents do is just incomplete.
You mentioned the kind of phrase football family.
Yep.
And to kind of extend that metaphor a little bit, do you feel like the dodgy bloke down the road that the family look at with suspicion, or do you feel as though you are part of the footballing family?
I think it all depends on the forum that anyone's discussing agents. So I liken it to we're the black sheep. So we're part of the family, but because it's all smoke and mirrors and such mystery, and nobody really knows what happens and what agents do, and we're seen to take money out of the game and be the bad guys. And I got a question the other day. In the press, you're always the ones that are unsettling the players in the clubs just to create a move. How honest is that? How real is that? So yeah, we're definitely part of the football family. Most transfers wouldn't happen in the game unless there was an agent involved somewhere, and normally there's more than one agent involved in either the players that are moving in and out, club agents and subcontracted agents. And we're looking at the market as a whole, and we know the requirements of each club and what each player profile is in each one of those clubs according to what manager's in or the philosophy of the club, which club has money, which club's under embargo, what the market rates of each player are at each club, so we can advise our players the best way that we can. We know whether they've got a good deal there or a bad deal there. And then we will work, well, I can't take your player until I get X, Y, and Z out. So can you help me get X, Y, and Z out? Okay, yeah, fine. So we would then help them. Well, all of these clubs need a right back, a left back, and a centre forward. So let's talk to these. And then we're talking about Europe and the rest of the world as well as the UK. And I think what people don't understand is that the clubs, each club has, I guess you could probably take the top clubs out of it, but most clubs have fairly limited resources and are very much reliant and dependent on these external areas of expertise to assist them with the moving of players in and out of the club.
How would you say the landscape is right now for agents? Because it's on the brink of changing. I mean, people like me would presume it's the Wild West with people running around with, as I say, bags of money and guns and saying, right, we need to get this done. And
the landscape
is it a bit more civilised than that?
It's a little bit more, not much, but a little bit more civilised than that. We've the gun thing went along a few years ago, so we've got on the 1st of October there are new FIFA regulations coming in to regulate the activity of agents across the world, and there's currently a lot of litigation in many European countries and in the UK where agents are bringing actions across the board to prevent the new regulations coming in. The main reason for that is because of the commission caps. So FIFA have decided that agents shouldn't be able to take so much money from the game and have capped our commissions depending on a player's salary to either 10% or 6%. And the whole industry is up in arms about the fact that our commissions have been capped. So we're waiting the outcome of different suits across Europe and the UK to see what happens between now and October the 1st, which is only a few weeks away, to see what actually is then going to be implemented. Even then, it will still be subject to change.
Forgive me, but people won't have much sympathy for agents, bearing in mind everything we said over the last kind of 10 minutes about the kind of community and yeah, you're right. People say they take money out of the game, but your view is they keep the money almost recycling and keep the game going.
Yeah, they definitely keep the game going, but they don't talk about everybody else that takes money out of the game. So it just appears to be that agents are being vindicated by taking money out of the game, but you don't look at the owners that are taking the money out of the game or the players that are taking the money out of the game. It's all just aimed at agents. So I think we're getting a bit of an unfair rap at this moment in time, and we're having to try and fight our corner a little bit.
Is there an understanding about what these rules will mean for clubs, for players, or is it down to the agents because you're worried about where it's all going? So it's in your best interest to know the kind of detail of it, so you know what you're up against. But are other parties in the game kind of less aware of where things might go?
Yeah, I think there's a huge lack of understanding as to what the regulations are and what they're going to be and how they're going to impact from both a club and a player perspective. I think it's challenging because we're still going through. We're literally 2 weeks away from the date of implementation, and we still don't know what's going to happen. So I think it's a challenge for clubs to get their heads around because we don't actually know. I mean, it was only 3 or 4 weeks ago that the FA put their draft regulations out for consultation, and before then we didn't know what they even looked like, and it was just a select few agencies that were chosen to participate in the consultation, and we've not had any feedback from the consultation or any revised drafts of the regulations based on that consultation. So I have no idea whether or not the consultation was useful, whether they took any points on board, because nobody's come back or decided to speak to us about it. So I think until it's certain what's actually going to happen, maybe that's why clubs and players haven't engaged in the process, but it's going to have such a large impact, especially for players who are now going to have if they earn over $200,000 US per year, they will now have their salary, their agency commission taken out of their net salary. So whereas previously it's paid for by the club as a benefit in kind for them within their contract, and then they have to pay the tax, so it goes on their P11D and then they just pay the tax on that. They're now going to have the agency commission taken directly from their net salary, and that's going to have a huge impact on every single player. So for me, players should be making themselves more aware of the regulations and how that's going to be for them going forwards. It's also changing because it's now going quarterly, so instead of being paid once or twice a year, it's mandatory that it's now in quarterly installments starting as soon as the window closes. That will also change. So players from a cash flow perspective, depending on when the clubs decide to deduct it from their salary to then pay to us. We don't know anything about the clearinghouse and how that's going to work and if it is going to work. So there's a lot of changes that clubs and players both need to know about that's going to impact, especially for sporting directors, because they're going to need to change the way they negotiate a deal going forwards. And there's lots of nuances within the regulations which will probably change how agents come at them with terms of the player's contract as to what is included in the cap and what isn't included in the cap. So they definitely need to make themselves aware of it. Is
there also a danger it sets kind of players against agents, bearing in mind they're suddenly aware of how much it costs to have an agent?
I think it will make players take note more of the services that they're being provided. So they're now going to be paying for it and seeing that they're paying for it. and go, well, what am I actually getting for the money that I'm paying here? So whereas before, I'm not sure that they had any clue other than what we told them on the day of the deal, and then we have to provide them with an annual return, which I'm not sure that they read anyway. They don't really pay much attention to it. And because we work with their financial advisors, the accountants, etc., to code out their commission, so it's not all one lump sum at the end of the year, it's quite small in comparison to what they're paid. There's not really any thought or intensity or focus on what it is that they're paying. I think now they're paying out their net salary and they're going to see it come out quarterly. They're going to look at what it is that they're getting and weigh up whether or not that's good value.
Do you think we are going to see kind of more churn there with players ditching agents and going to something that they think looks better?
I think one of the things in the industry that agents are known for, which I personally I can't stand it, is that they just do the deal and they never speak to the player. So they do the deal, they take the cash, and the player never sees them.
But that does go on, doesn't it?
Oh, it goes on across the board. But what the regulations have now brought in, or at the moment as they're written, which could change, is they can terminate for just cause. There is no definition on what just cause is, but one of them is a breach of the representation agreement. So the representation agreement will set out the services that we should provide to our player within that relationship. And I think if what goes on in the agency world at the moment is players are just not spoken to, or no one goes to watch their games and there's no feedback. So the full service that agents say they provide and then don't, I think the regulations will give them an easier out, for sure, of their contracts.
And I imagine we're also going to perhaps see less of the kind of one-man band. So maybe player care improves as a result of regulation, or is that me kind of hoping?
I think that there's a huge improvement across the board, because what the regulations do is bring in a licensing structure. So now all of the agents to act in the industry to do a deal have to pass an exam, unless they're on the legacy. So if they pass the exam the first time around, which was 2008, pre-2008, then they're automatically given a license because they already passed the exam back then. If they didn't, they now have to pass an exam. So it's already rapidly improving the knowledge that every single agent needs to have, which will improve the service that they give to their players. So that for me is amazing. The one-man bands, I think, are going to struggle because they won't be able to provide the holistic service that's going to be required. So once players realise, well, that's why I'm paying, what am I getting? Well, nothing, because I don't see my agent. But if I go over there, then I see my agent every week, and there's somebody at a game, and there's someone looking after my family, and they do this, this, and this for me. The one-man bands simply can't survive because they can't provide that service. So we'll definitely see, I don't know, probably 50% less agents than what there is today, if not more. Maybe under 1,000 in the UK as of, well, actually, in 2 days' time is the last exam before the implementation of the regulation. So on the 20th of September, they'll all pass or fail their exams. And so 7 days after that, FIFA will publish a list as to who is licensed to perform intermediate agency activity, because they've changed the name, and who hasn't, who isn't.
Is it your feeling, is it your gut feeling, if you like, that the regulation will make a better environment, or is it just going to be a different environment?
See, I'm conflicted, because I think the regulations are a good thing because of the improvement of quality of every single agent and what that means for players. So it improves the professionalism, it improves the knowledge and the expertise in the industry. So it stops the cowboys from being able to come in and just persuade a player to do their deal when they don't know what they're doing. And the deal's really bad for the player. There might be option years, their length, whatever it might be within their contract. And you just look at it and go, that's an absolute disaster. Why on earth has that been signed? It stops that from being able to take place. And on the other hand, you've got commission caps, which now allow people that are acting for the selling club to earn more money than the agent who looks after the player. So that's where there's a disparity now.
So that's where there's going to be a growth business.
Yeah, so there'll be a growth business in agents representing selling clubs, because you can take 10% of a transfer fee, whereas acting for a player, you can only take 6%, acted 3% from the player and 3% from the club. So I don't know exactly what we're going to see in the next 12 to 18 months. I think you're going to see mergers of smaller to medium agencies come together. And it will definitely be an increase of agents that sit on the brokering side. And we might get to a stage where us as player agents sit here and a deal might have already been done for our player and we don't know anything about it because it's gone club to club. And then they come to us as a last resort and go, well, this deal's already done. So they say it's in the best interest of the players, but all in all, the players are losing out in almost all aspects.
I was going to say, in an age of player power, is that about to shift and change? And maybe because of that, clubs are going to get a bit more of a say.
Yeah, clubs are trying to pull the power back, and I think FIFA have used this as a mechanism to be able to do that. I think what we should remember is that it's the clubs that have created this. So it's the clubs that have decided to pay the transfer fees that they've decided to pay and have decided to pay the wages that they've decided to pay. My agents don't sit with a gun and force a chief executive of a club to pay that amount of money for that particular player. That's voluntarily given. And it seems to me that the agents have got the blame for the huge wages and the huge transfer fees that we're currently seeing. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting time all round for clubs, players, but it's certainly not happening in the best interest of players. And I'm not sure that the players know that yet. And it'll be interesting to see what happens when the players do know that they've now got to pay out of their net salary and that the club can't pay it on their behalf. There's the incentive. So clubs will use agents and will use commissions as an incentive to help them get players out that they don't want anymore, as well as get players in. So it's not often that agents are sitting there doing nothing for their money. They're often helping clubs either reduce their wage bill by getting players out, which then increases their squad numbers so they can bring somebody in. And often with financial fair play, it's really important that you need to move players out and move players in. But the incentive that they're going to be able to offer a player's agent to do that is now zero, because we can't take commission from a selling club. We can only take commission from a buying club and our player. So then you're going to have to get another agent to do the sale, but they've not got the interests of the player at heart, which you have. So it's the regulations in that sense are counterintuitive.
But was it nice to be asked? Was it nice to be consulted?
It was nice to be consulted, but whether or not anything that we've said will have been taken into account is anyone's business. So yeah, it was nice to be consulted. But when you're talking about a 1st of October implementation with a July-August consultation, you might say slightly late to be consulting.
So we're in a kind of fingers crossed territory, are we?
Yes, we are. We've been in a fingers crossed territory for a long time. And we've still got outstanding legal cases in Germany where we're waiting for the ECJ to make a ruling, which will then determine a lot of cases that go on around Europe. So as we stand, the regulations will not apply in Germany at all until the ruling comes in. So any deal to do with Germany, a German club, a German player, a German coach or a German agent, the new FIFA rules will not apply. Whereas a deal currently in the UK, there's an outstanding Rule K arbitration that's taking place next week. But as it currently stands, the rules will apply to the UK. So now you've got this scenario which different deals in different territories with different people involved you'll be using different regulations.
So have you got to sit down with your agents in the room and say, right, this is what's going to be happening? Once you know what the guidelines are going to be, is it almost like Kelly the lecturer?
Yes, I've been the lecturer for the last 18 months, I would have said. So I was lucky enough to be involved a little bit with the FIFA consultation process. So I worked with the agents for the previous year before their exams on teaching them the new regulations and the regulations that made up the exam, essentially. So we worked together for a long time. We took it quite seriously, and I think I've got an 87% pass rate on my first go. So we'll see how the remainder do in a couple of days' time. Fingers crossed. And I do it quite regularly, so I update them as we go along. You'll see from my LinkedIn that I regularly post updates as and when they come in, and the lads get those updates too. So as soon as I know, they know.
I'm not here to soft soap the agent thing or make you feel better about yourself, but I am here to be fair.
Yep.
So how big is player care when you're looking at OmniSports? And I'm not going to give you a free advert here, but clearly you walk into this place.
Yep.
It feels busy, it feels lively, it feels as though you have a dialogue, an ongoing dialogue and an ongoing part in your players' lives, if they want it to be that way.
Yeah. Every single player wants something different from their agent. We would tailor our service to what the player wants. The full service, if they wanted the full service, we work with their families. We've often got their wives and children in here. The children are going up and down the slides in their bean bags. We would look after their concierge service, so concert bookings, table bookings, holiday bookings, etc., whatever they need. Anything off the pitch, so we'd work with they work with their doctors and their medical team if they've got an injury. We might work with sports psychologists. We'll work with the analysts. We do a lot of statistical analysis. So we have in-house team that looks at their statistics during the weekend and then provides them feedback on a weekly basis if that's what they want. Like a lot of players we're finding like to get their statistics on a more detailed level. So they like to receive those. And we do a lot of pathway and progression work. So where are they now? Where do they want to be? And how do we get them there? And we work alongside them to hold them accountable to each of their goals and their KPIs each week. So we work with their accountants and their finance team to sort their money out to make sure that they're setting themselves up in the best possible way for the future. And I would obviously deal with external legals in each of the different areas that they need assistance in, whether that be divorce, property, crime, negligence, whatever they need. I would sit alongside them and kind of project manage each one of those to make sure that what they can focus on is on the pitch. So we take off all of the pressure off the pitch so they can perform on the pitch. So our whole ethos is enhancing and improving lives. And the pillars that we work from: delivery on trust and cast iron integrity, which in this industry is really important and what sets us apart, I think.
And when you hear horror stories about agents going to change light bulbs in people's houses or order pizza, does that go on?
I don't know if we've ever had anyone change a light bulb, but we might go and, I don't know, what else have we done? Oh, we went and collected pills from a pharmacy for one of our players that was bedbound and couldn't get out. So we might organise things for their wedding. They might say, we need an event. Can you put it on for us? We need a box at X. Can you get us a box at X? We want to go here. We need to go, whatever it is that they might do. Yeah, we would do that.
I'm just wondering whether you're a nightmare in football in the terms of going into the rooms and knowing what those people do job-wise, because you've done most of them as well.
Yeah.
It kind of makes you a kind of silver bullet, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's really useful to have sat both sides of the fence because I know what each of the people do within clubs and I know what the players need, and I've seen the agency side and the movers and the shakers, and I've done deals from both sides, which is interesting because I know what I was trying to do when I was that side, so I can see it being mirrored against me. So in terms of the things that clubs are trying to get away with and trying to do in terms of their contracts, I'm able to know already before we've started and kind of counteract that. But I've got really good relationships with everybody that we deal with, and most people within the football family are trying to achieve the same thing. So when we're negotiating, it's it's a fairly friendly affair. It's not, I don't think, as it's portrayed in the media. I'm
just wondering whether the calibre of the person that you're dealing with has improved as football's kind of modernised and more money's come into the game, or is that still kind of hit and miss?
I think that's probably where the sporting director comes in, right? Because the sporting director has come in, and instead of it being the traditional, Mr. Agent is going to deal directly with the manager, and the manager says, well, you need to deal with my agent. So it's all very smoke and mirrors, cloak and daggers, old school, who knows who, what's the network. It's now far more professional. So the deals with managers are very few and far between now. So you wouldn't ordinarily speak to a manager to negotiate a player's contract. But I know when I was club side that would happen quite often. And that's difficult for an ownership, because when a deal's already been done by your manager and you're backing your manager, it's very difficult, again, to have that fractious conversation to say, well, we're not going to take that player. Well, I've already done the deal. Okay, so what the sporting director's done is provide a level of mediation and conciliation between the two parties, but a level of professionalism and a strategic element to exactly what it is that's going on within the football club. So when we're negotiating, we now know who we're negotiating with, and it's far more professional and strategic in its intent, rather than just, shall we do a deal? Yes. Can I be paid this much? Yes. Here's the player, sign here. They know they've got strategy in place for their recruitment and their talent identification. They've got a list of the players that they want and why they want them. The manager will have been involved on a side level to say, well, yeah, I like these players, but it's very much the sporting director and his team that will work with the ownership as to which of those players they're going to bring in. And they've got budgetary constraints and considerations with FFP and within the club and the cash flow, etc. So they can make better decisions around the negotiation and what they can and can't do. And we see far more structures on deals in clubs than what was previously the case.
Is the role of sporting director kind of still finding its way, though, a little bit? I mean, it's still new, it's still kind of in development. And I guess it's also fair to say that different clubs have different understandings of the remits of the role.
Yeah, I think it's... I think some of it's impacted by the ownership's desire to be involved in like a football manager capacity. So it's often the glamour and the sexiness of doing a deal and doing the transfers in and out and being involved in that process, because there's a huge buzz to that. It's very exciting to do that. And I think a lot of owners, with the emotions involved in it, can sometimes forget that they've got somebody in place that does that. And sometimes I think there's a lot of work to be done in that model, but I think that's individuals. I think the role of the sporting director is more or less known now. I think it just depends on the staff that are already in place within the club when they put in a sporting director, and the desires of the owners of what they want that sporting director to do, and whether or not the sporting director used to be a head of recruitment, for example, so they want him to focus a lot on talent identification and recruitment, or whether they're genuinely there to look after the strategy of the ownership to implement that into across the board, and they're leading and managing to make sure that that is protected on behalf of the owners.
Your COO here,
Yep.
You did the CEO course with VSI, all these abbreviations
Yes.
and acronyms. How did you find that being a student again?
I loved it. Really loved it. I love to learn. I like to improve, develop, take new information on. And I hadn't done it for a few years. Obviously, I took my legal exams and qualified as a lawyer. And then I just thought, I feel like I need to take an extra step. So I've worked in the senior management in football, and now I want to consolidate all of my learning and see if I can do an MBA. So I worked full time, did my MBA, and I have my children. So it was a fairly challenging time for me, but I absolutely loved it. The people on the course, the different experts, the different arenas, because they weren't all from sport, they were from different areas and different sports, not just football. Their different experiences, especially when you look at organisational change and cultural behaviour and people management. That was fascinating, because you get to look at the theoretical and the academics behind what you're actually doing in practice. So when you're doing it in practice and then you get to see the backdrop of that, it's really fascinating to go, oh, wow, I can see that. That fits there. Whereas when I did my law course, because that was the beginning of my career, I very much had the academics and the theoretical, but not the business, real world frontline. This is how it actually works. So for me, it was far more beneficial to do the work and understand business and then go back and do the theory and the academics behind it. but the contacts and the networks were phenomenal, and we've still got a really close group between us, and we encourage each other, and we put each other forwards for different roles in different areas. And I think everybody massively benefited from every single area of what we did in our course.
That's the hidden strength, I think, that people don't think about when either it's the sporting director's course with VSI or it's the CEO course.
Yep.
It's the cohort.
Yeah.
It's almost the added on, bolted on extra, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's good because there's so much diversity in it. So we had a female rugby player, we had a female football player, we had the commercial director of a Premier League football club, we had a senior leader from the Premier League. So across the board, we had such a wide range of skills and experiences that the debates that we had in class about really high level subjects was always so useful. And then the external guests that were brought in to check and challenge what we were talking about, and we were able to check and challenge them and engage with their expertise and experience. It was really practical. So we had the academic and theory, but we also had the practical coalface side from the experts in the industry. So the mixture of both was really useful. And then the networks that we've created from that, not just from our cohort, but from the events that we do with the other cohorts, and then the Sporting Directors Programme, which I now lecture on, the network's amazing.
I want to finish off. You mentioned being a mum. I'm not talking about working mums. I'm not going to do all that. We haven't got time to do that. I need to know, they're two boys being brought up in Suffolk, that they're Ipswich Town fans.
They're not Ipswich Town fans. I'm really sorry.
Is it too hard to sell?
It's too hard to sell. Dad's a Man United fan and I'm a Norwich fan, so I'm really pushing for Norwich for obvious reasons. I think I'm fighting a losing battle though, sadly.
And the other thing, when we walk around OmniSport, the only thing that seems to be missing is a table tennis table.
Oh no, we've got a table tennis table. We've got two table tennis tables.
Is anyone brave enough to take you on though?
Those that don't know are brave enough. We have.
You were pretty good, or you are pretty good at.
I was top 7.
Yeah.
In the country. I still play a little bit, but I don't like being bad at it. And to be good at it, you have to practice every single day. I can't practice every single day. So then I go and play. Then I lose to people I shouldn't lose to, and it blows my mind. So my 8-year-old now plays, and I'm very much happy to engage in his development and learning.
You're very passionate about what you do. What were you like as a player? Were you hard to manage? Bearing in mind, talking about how much you don't like losing.
I've never given it any thought, but now I think back to my coach and how he tried to manage me as a player. Yeah, I would say I was very hard work. I don't like losing. I'm a really bad loser. But that's not a bad thing.
No, it isn't. And is it something you've taken into kind of your professional career as well? I'm not saying you're there till the midnight oil is being burnt on a deal, but you're there making sure that the players get what you want them to get.
Yeah, I think being involved in high-level sport from a young age really teaches you so many things that give you a really good foundation for life. Like resilience, you're going to lose, you pick yourself back up, you learn from it, you move on. And you're analysing what you're doing every shot. Why is that wrong? Marginal gains, small changes, working with the team, working with a coach, being coachable, listening, active listening, supporting your team, being there for them when you're in the team environment, but also being able to work solo.
I was going to say, what were you like as a doubles player?
Really good. I actually really enjoy playing doubles.
You're a team player.
Yeah, I'm definitely a team player. There are some where you just go, oh, you shouldn't play doubles at all. But yeah, I really enjoy playing doubles.
Did you think about doing it properly, kind of professionally? I don't.
There's not much money in table tennis. So when we were given the talk as youngsters, so top 7 in the country, and they're talking about Olympics, Commonwealths, etc. Unless you had a really big financial backing, i.e. your parents, it wasn't really a viable option because I had to work and it's not going to pay the bills. So yeah, I could have done it, but I'm pleased that I didn't do it and that I've taken the pathway in the career that I have now.
If I'd asked you 10 years ago, where would you be in 10 years' time? You probably wouldn't have said sat in a chair doing a podcast, being a COO of OmniSports. Where do you see things going in 10 years?
Oh, wow, I have no idea. I can't even tell you what's going to happen in the industry in 3 weeks.
Well, no, that's a fair point. But you clearly love what you're doing now. So that's probably a fair thing to say, isn't it?
I think for me, I'm just so passionate about football and I'm passionate about leadership and people. So I'll definitely be in the football industry in one sense or the other. That's all I know. That's all I can tell you.
And as an industry, nothing like it?
Nothing like it. My friends think I'm crazy. Like the hours and the conversations and the business and what goes on, and every day is completely different and you never know what you're going to get next. It's 24/7. So it's not like... it's a challenge because 9 till 5 would be easy, but this is all of the time. So if you need to do a deal at 11 o'clock at night, then that's what you've got to do. If you need to do something at 7 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, whatever it is, you have to do it. But that it becomes a way of life. So for me, my job's more of a lifestyle than it is a job. But because I love it and I'm passionate about it, it doesn't feel like I've worked today.
So the best feeling in the world, getting a deal done or your team winning?
Both. Different ways.
Yeah,
I'm
that
just
hurts
very
me, bearing
passionate
in mind who
generally
your
about
team
most
is.
things. I know, I'm sorry. But you've got your chance this year, so...
Touch wood, it's going okay at the moment. Look, it's been brilliant. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you for
letting
having
us
me.
do it. The studio is fantastic. That's episode 3 of the Sporting Directors Podcast with VSI. All wrapped up. Fantastic stuff with Kelly. Keep your eyes open for episode 4, where we're going to be speaking to the only British sporting director currently working in the Bundesliga.